Well, thank you all for coming, and I'm very excited about what we will present today. But first, I want to start with Josh Henderson, our connection with Galveston Police Department Animal Control Services, who has been instrumental all along the way in getting the program started and actually works in it. I mean, that's his profession. And he has lent his expertise and humor and um, determination that has helped us all along. And he is the supervisor of the Animal Services Division. So I will turn it over to Josh for now, and then we'll get into our new system after Josh.
Hello, hello. I hope everybody can see and hear me well. I'm connected to a hard line, so hopefully this will go smoothly. So my name is Josh Henderson. I am the supervisor for the City of Galveston's Animal Services Unit, and we respond to, if it's not human, we respond to it. And as far as this group concerns, that includes every injured bird call that comes in through the police department or the Humane Society or my cell phone or my email. There's a number of ways that we end up finding out about injured birds. This year alone, we've responded to, on the island alone, almost 700. To include the mainland, we're well over 900 transporting using this group to get those birds the help they need. For those that are new to the group or don't really understand the full history, I just want to touch real quick on why we need this so desperately on our island and in our county. Injured birds is not a new thing. It's not a new problem, and it's not one that there's a quick fix for. We're going to continue to respond to injured birds today, tomorrow, and for the next 10 years until you find some magic solution that prevents birds from becoming injured. There will be people to save them, thank God. So years back, we had this nice little old lady named Trudy Bells, some of you may or may not have been familiar with. And she took in every bird that any county officer could drop off at her door. Unfortunately, people don't live forever, and she's one of them that is no longer with us. With her absence, we needed a place that we could take all of our injured birds that wasn't Miss Trudy Bell's porch. That ultimately ended up being the Wildlife Center of Texas. What we found real quick was that while we can absolutely get the birds there and they're willing to take them, it's about 60 miles north of the island, and transporting birds from here to there became quite a logistical challenge. So in getting the birds from here to there, we ended up in, I believe it was 2017, we held a brief training orientation session in Bolivar. Ended up with approximately 30 volunteers, and my math might be off. And we were able to slowly but surely nurse this lovely, very beneficial network of volunteers into transporting the injured birds once they'd been captured and stabilized, prepared for transport. We were able to move those birds from not only just the island, but we were moving birds from the Bolivar Peninsula, as well as we moved several birds from the mainland. And I think we're moving birds from even the Webster and NASA League City area as well pretty regularly these days. The group has changed a little bit. We've had some key players that have moved. We've had to restructure and redesign a few things, but all in all, what this does for animal services, not only for the island. I have a small unit. There's a whopping 3 of us, and last year alone we answered 7,500 calls between 3
Oh
people
my
in a
gosh.
year.
Wow.
We are absolutely never ending, constantly working. We're here 24, we're on call 24 hours a day, and we work 7 days a week. That being the case, because we're constantly have 9 things to do, having available staff to drop what we're doing to drive 60 miles north is remarkably detrimental to every other service. It's hard to have one of our officers 50 miles out of our jurisdiction when somebody gets bit in the face by a dog. And so having a reliable network to transport these birds means that we don't have to wait to get these birds help until we have the available time to move them. We can collect these birds, get them to a drop-off location. We use the Humane Society here in Galveston. We get these birds boxed up, and bear with me. They're ready to go. We fill out the form, we drop the bird off, we send our email requesting transport, and this little guy will be on his way to Houston with the next bus that we can get him up there, which is a hell of a lot faster than I can sacrifice one of my employees to drive 60 miles north. What that has meant for this last year is 900 birds have not had to wait on a city employee's availability to get medical care. The city of Galveston is not having to pay somebody to go back and forth. And I wish we could pay every volunteer. It'd be nice to give everybody a gas card. But it's not something I can commit my staff to do every day. The Humane Society can't do it. And the brass tacks is, if it relied on a city government animal control authority to transport every one of these animals 60 miles away for care, there's no way we would have saved 900 birds already this year. There's absolutely no way we would be able to accomplish that without the beneficial assistance of this group. It is instrumental to the health and safety of all these birds, which is more important than any of our employees' time. And so for the birds we've helped, I have to thank every one of you that has had anything to do with this group, because it wouldn't be possible without every mile driven or moment spent for the furtherance of this group. I think that's pretty well my introduction. I'm absolutely available for any questions anybody might have as far as animal services, what we do, what we can do, and how we might be able to assist anyone moving forward.
Hey, Josh, we've got a question from someone in the group. Ruth, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hi. I was just curious, what are the most common reasons for birds to get injured?
So we have, it depends honestly on the time of the year. The best example I have is the Great Pelican Crisis of 2014. We rescued over 99, I want to say it was 119 pelicans in 30 days, suffering from being caught by fishing hooks and wrapped in fishing line. So that coincided with the flounder run. So different times of years brings different kinds of injuries. During migration season, we see a lot of really lethargic birds that after having gone from migrating and flying for 600, 700 miles to land here, it leaves them low on energy, They've lost a significant amount of muscle, and they're hungry. A lot of those are just needing good groceries, needing to get back up and going. And then we have baby season that brings everybody and their mother wants to go kidnapping fledglings because they're, in their mind, saving the world. And sometimes we can re-nest those. Sometimes it's simply too late to get them back where they should go, and we got to get them to rehab. So we do have a good handful of collisions. Birds have run into something and have a broken wing, but our more common injuries are going to be just birds that are lethargic or have fallen from a nest, and then baby season is just being completely inundated with fledglings.
Okay, and we have one more question. Mohammed, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, Josh, just sort of curiosity, how did the animal services or this type of service ended up with the police department? I mean, that's kind of strange.
Well, it is, and it's something that's transitioned a little bit in the last probably 20 years. We've seen a lot of transition in animal control, all in all. So animal control, we enforce every animal related law, from the Texas Penal Code to the Health and Safety Code. If you get bit by a dog, we go and do that. We also investigate animal cruelty, so I'm a Texas certified cruelty investigator. And because of our law enforcement, our investigation duties and responsibilities, being having our organization and our unit ran through the police department allows us to work hand in hand with, I am a civilian officer, I'm not the police. My report directly to a police lieutenant is my supervisor. And so when one of my criminal investigations is concluded, I hand over the findings of my investigation and he gets to go make the arrest off of my findings. It ultimately works a lot better than in the days of old. Animal control in Galveston used to be run through City Hall, and it was simply not an efficient way to go about proper investigations. It's also a hell of a lot safer for us. My radio goes straight to the police department dispatch, so if I'm out on a call and somebody's not quite pleased with what I have to say and I need assistance, all I have to do is press one button and I can get a squad of people to come and assist me. And so that's ultimately why animal control, animal services is run through the police department. As far as why we are also dealing with injured birds, part of our mission statement is that we respond to stray, diseased, and infirmed animals, as well as injured animals, both domestic and wildlife. And so whether it's an injured raccoon, or I'm also the roadkill king, if something's ran over in the road, we're picking those up. We're scooping pelicans off the causeway when they get hit. So live, dead, or injured, it all comes to us. But it's the criminal element that of our job duties that leaves us attached to the police department.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Josh, I guess that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Okay, thank you, Josh. That was great and very interesting hearing the background. That's all new to me. So next is kind of an overview of where we started, and then we'll go into our new system. But I wanted to mention one thing. Josh talked about the pelican die-off in 2016 or 2014, whenever it was. Well, that is when we started being involved in it and thinking something needs to be done. We were doing shore patrols, and master naturalists and other organizations were doing shore patrols and running into these pelicans. And there was a need for both education and rescue. So, so we'll start with our slides in just a second. Rather than reinventing the wheel, I used portion of the program that Tim Long put together on April 15th, 2018, when we had a training at Moody Gardens. So this was our first meeting. Well, this was our second training. Sandy Parker and I first went to Sharon Schmaltz that runs the Wildlife Center of Texas with this idea that we really needed to do something. And we had encountered Josh. I didn't know what he did. He was dressed in plain clothes, but we had encountered him in another program, Bird Nerd program that Audubon, Texas did. And he was very enthusiastic, and as it turned out, he had a good reason to be very enthusiastic about doing something. So we got together, we talked to Sharon, and then we'll go to the next slide. Chuck, can we go to the next slide, or shall I do it? There we go. So this is, and Tim Long put this together, and there was no need to reinvent the wheel. This is what was happening. You know, rescued birds, there was no coverage. The local Galveston rehabber stopped taking birds. This was after Trudy passed, I believe, but it was either her or another rehabber, but everybody was finding dead birds or sick birds everywhere. I mean, you could drive, I drove around San Leon and I'd see 4 or 5 pelicans that were about to die standing on the side of the road. And so, you know, there was something needed to be done. And so we got together, and you can see the map. You can see why we have so many birds. Galveston County is one of the places. It's a birding hotspot. It probably has more birding hotspots than any other place in Texas. You can hardly go anywhere in Galveston without seeing birds. Okay, next, please. So that was the same time we had the P3 partnership. So we had communication and dialogue with all of these folks along the way, and it was just the perfect fertilizer that we needed to get together and plan the first training in January of 2017. And the Bolivar Peninsula offered that was the place, and still is, with the fewest amount of resources to deal with injured birds, and sometimes the most. Not recently, but sometimes in the past it has been. It was a huge success. We had 70 attendees, and we broke the groups into teams: Bolivar, Galveston Island, and the Galveston County mainland. But as you well know, 70 attendees may result in 10 dependable volunteers. But that's when we started, January 1st, 2017. Next slide, please. And these were the major players in the first organization. Animal Service Unit. Both Sharon and Josh gave presentations, and they were great presentations. We went way over our time. We coordinated with Keep Bolivar Beautiful to find the place. And the Galveston Humane Society was present also. We went over a lot of things about bird rescue, the legality of it, what was legal, what wasn't, how to, and we started. Next slide, please. So the initial plan was to relay birds from Galveston to from Bolivar to Galveston to the Wildlife Center. And we used text, emails, and calls. Then we established a Facebook page to communicate the need for rescue and transport. And that became much more popular, much faster than any of us anticipated. Next, please. And these were some of the highlights of the birds that came in. I mean, it's amazing all the different number of species, and we'll talk more about that later. But this initial program that Tim Long did was in April of 2018. So by that time, we had received these birds and a first time in Texas bird, a white-crowned pigeon, which is native to the Yucatan. It ran into a window at a convenience store right by the Bolivar Ferry. And one of the people working there picked it up and called Josh. They picked it up, and when it got to the Wildlife Center, they said, wait a minute, this is a bird we've never seen before. So it made birding news big time. We suspect it caught the winds of the hurricane and ended up there. But a little research on the white-crowned pigeon shows that they're very strong flyers, and they have been seen in the Gulf of Mexico many times. Other unusual birds, the magnificent frigate bird, we've rescued several of those. I have to change my vocabulary to rescue. Because caught is not exactly acceptable. All right, next. So this was a low light, a huge low light, but it ended up with some benefits. On May 4th, there was a major migration movement, and there was also a major storm. And you can see in the newspaper clipping, the high rise in Galveston was lit up with lights. And on that morning on May 4th, Josh called and he said, there are a lot of dead birds around this building. Somebody called and I said, how many dead birds? 10? He said, oh no, well over 100. I said, are you there? No. I said, can you go there and pick them up? Yes. So he went directly there, picked up over 400 dead birds and brought them in. And these were mostly warblers. 400 migratory birds were killed in one night running into the building. I was out of town and Sandy went over and helped him identify the birds and sort them out and freeze them. They would have just been thrown in the trash, but my good friend, I called my good friend Richard Gibbons with Houston Audubon, who was with LSU and has a PhD in ornithology, and told him, I said, shall we save him? He said, yes, please, please save him. So Sandy and Josh wrapped and identified labeled every one of these birds and froze them for further study. And then A&M somehow got hold of the idea and were upset with us because we didn't send them to A&M. So knowing the diplomatic Richard Gibbons, he worked out a deal where they could be split. Half of them went to A&M and the other half went to LSU. And Josh did all that packing, he and his staff, and mailing. And now they're serving some good genetic research. The other big positive that came from this event is after the event, Josh did a survey in Galveston and found all the buildings that were over 4 stories high, and there really weren't that many of them this was the major offender. I know many of you have seen how it is lit up at night. And so they met with them, Houston Audubon, a number of people, Josh, Sandy was there. Again, I was out of town. And got the building owners to agree to turn the lights off every year from March 15th to May 15th. And I can see the building from my porch. So they have been doing it every year. This year they were a little late. And I called a couple of folks, and sure enough, the next night all the lights were out. So this was a major breakthrough to get the lights turned off of the building during migration. Okay, next. So the statistics to date in April of 2018, this is total from the beginning of January of 2017 to April 2018. 400 birds transported, 76 different species, and 30 volunteers have transported. And you can see how the numbers go and fluctuate with the season. So that was then, and let's go to the next slide. And this is now. If you look at, I hope you all can see this, look at May, June, and July, and the number of birds that we have seen in 2020. There you go. See those green spikes? That's how many birds we have responded to in April and July. And that number, if you look at the little chart, from January to July, that's 909 birds. That is a tremendous amount to have been handled. And there is no way anybody could have handled it without this team. This team was very stretched. And I want to take this point in time to talk about the contribution that Karen Scott made during her time. She took Tim's place as the coordinator for Galveston and Bolivar. And she did a tremendous job of organizing, documenting everything, and she was everything. She did so many things and improved our data system, kept good track of everything, was a wonderful coordinator, but she, as anyone would expect, was burnt out and needed a break. So she resigned as of the end of July, and I have been the main coordinator since then, and I've learned a lot. It's a huge job, and we'll talk more about that later. If we look at some of these other numbers, here we see in the writing, we have, of the 909 birds that were transported, 670 were from Galveston and 239 from the mainland. And that touches on something that Josh mentioned, that in the past, everything came from Galveston. But as the Facebook grew, more people learned about it. And there were more people in League City, Nassau Bay, people calling us from various places. And we started doing rescues. Yellow-crowned night herons were falling out of nests everywhere. And recently, Mississippi kite chicks are everywhere. And we'll talk more about that later. But so the demand grew, and we were working with Facebook, text, telephone calls, and sometimes some of the reports came on Facebook, some came by telephone calls because all of our phone numbers were out there. There were times when Karen, myself, and Davis, and we're the three main workers on this group that are not routine transporters. I'll talk about the transporters in a minute. But with that system, we'd find all three of us were working on the same incident without knowing it because we had no coordinated effort. So it came to the point, well, we're growing so big we can't handle this, plus scheduling transporters. The transporters that we have done a fantastic job. We had a little ceremony for our transporters I can't remember when it was, last year. No, I know when it was. It was in February of this year, to give awards to the folks that had transported the most. And Dorothy Hogg had done the most transports. I don't have the numbers right now, but we had reliable transporters from Galveston most of the time. Everybody's life changes, things change. So we have to accept that we're in a constant flux of some sort. And you can also see that 172 transports came from Galveston, and that's because that's where most of our birds originate. And our primary connection is with Galveston Animal Services. As this past few months evolved, we were having birds coming in Dickinson and League City, some other places, and we were just too popular. So we knew there had to be another way. And with Karen resigning, I wanted to try a one-call system because I had worked in emergency response for Texas, the TCEQ, for 25 years, and I knew that's what EPA used, the Coast Guard. I've worked on the Valdez, and everything was under that system, one call system, and then roles and tasks to fulfill the need of whatever that emergency was. So we came up with a plan, and we'll talk about that next. Do we want to answer questions before we go to the second portion? Maureen?
Right now, today, we don't have any questions, but once again, we want to remind everybody, if you have questions, please put them in chat. And once we get a couple steady, we'll just take a breath and ask you to do it then. How's that?
Okay, I saw 6 on the chat, so I thought there was some, but I guess not. Okay. Okay, let's go to part 2. Well, while Chuck is getting us to part 2, I will let you know we have transporters that originate in Galveston, some on the mainland. We have few transporters from Bolivar, and we use a different system there. There's usually, well, Becky Zykes, one of our volunteers on Galveston and not a master naturalist, has agreed to walk onto the ferry and get the box from the Bolivar resident that has rescued the bird, and ride the ferry back. And she's made friends with the ferry folks, and they help her carry the box and know she's coming and want to know all about the bird. So it's a neat little process, but it takes some coordinating. So this is our Injured Bird Response Team one call system overview. And we're going to run through the organizations that power the whole system, the tools of the one call system, our process and rescue, the roles and tasks, and the unintended consequences and next steps. Next, please. So here's the players, and you can see it's a lot of folks. Who's who and what they do for injured bird rescue. Nice little rhyme to remember. Our primary focus is the Wildlife Center of Texas. We work under their permit. It's one of the founders, and it's the only facility that we will bring birds to and work with because we're working under their permit. Galveston Police Department Animal Services, they do everything on Galveston Island, and we are so thankful for that. We can just say, anybody calls on any bird on Galveston, call and give them the phone number. And there are very few times that a bird has come in after hours that we have rescued. We have done a few, but that's a wonderful relief. And they're one of the founders, as we talked about before, and they delivered the rescued birds to the Galveston Island Humane Society. The Galveston Island Humane Society receives birds from the public, from Galveston Animal Services and Bolivar, and they are a godsend because they can keep the birds for 24 hours. That gives us a chance to not make every trip for every bird. We wait 24 hours. I think the most birds that we have ever transported in one day was 9, but more recently, it's never one bird. We always transport 2 or 3 birds. And the transporters in Galveston pick up the birds there. Many of our transporters are from Galveston. Next. And then Galveston County Animal Resources is just beginning to cooperate or pick up birds at our call. We're reaching out to all animal services to confirm that they will rescue. And I've had occasion where an individual calls local animal services and they say, oh, we don't do that, call, and they tell them to call us. Well, I call back the animal services and say, I'm sorry, we don't have any people to volunteers to take care of this bird. Will y'all go out and rescue it? Oh, yes, ma'am, we will. So we're reaching out, and that they, based on what Josh just said, that is one of their primary duties. So one of the problems we've found is they don't know what to do with the birds after they get them. So, though I'll tell more about that in a minute. Bayou Animal Services has a brand new facility, and they occasionally receive and hold injured birds. We have an agreement with Galveston Humane Society and the League City Animal Shelter that they will respond to all birds, they will accept all birds, and then we will pick them up and transport them. Humane Society doesn't respond, but Galveston Animal Services does. And they provide a holding facility for the mainland injured birds. Davis May, we had a problem in that their new building is so cold that the birds were always dead the next morning. So Davis started keeping them overnight, and then he built a warming box for them, and they've been keeping the birds there, and that is working well. We met with them. They were so happy to come to this agreement, and they've been wonderful in working with us. So, so we're pleased to add them to our resources. So it complicates transportation a bit, but it's all worked out in that we have a group of mainland transporters, and sometimes they hook up with Galveston, sometimes they bring them in, but they're more readily available anytime during the day. Okay, next. Then this is the rest of the group, and of course our chapter master naturalist was one of the founder and supporter, the only organization to invest any funds into the effort. I think we've had some individuals offer to buy things and bought things, but we actually have a budget and use it to buy boxes and other smaller items, and the main source of our volunteers. Then the other groups are the Galveston Rescuer and Transporters that are volunteers, Bolivar Rescue, Mainland Rescues and Transporters, and then the unique group of Tiki Island Rescues and Transporters, and that is Maureen and Lynn and Alan and John. And I never realized how many pelican calls came from Tiki Island, but now I know. And they've just been great in responding to these. So they take care of all of the Tiki Islands. Turtle Patrol cooperates with us during Turtle Patrol time because they see the birds. They're doing Turtle Patrol and they see the injured birds. So we have a lot of our master naturalists do that too, and they are leaving Galveston, so it's a good way to transport injured birds. Next, please. So all of these groups and everything I've been telling you led to the search for a single source, and we decided to try a 24-hour hotline, and there's the number. And it just so happened that my daughter, Katie Retterink, works for a consultant for Center Point, and she had just set up a 24-hour hotline for them. So she knew all the companies, and she said, "Oh, Mom, I'll help you with that." So we tried a few and found that the Cloud Talk offered the best deal and the type of service that we could use. And so the way it is set up, you call the 646 phone number, you get a recording that tells you first to call Galveston if you found an injured bird on Galveston Island, and to tell us more about the bird and leave their phone number, and then someone will call you back. And then there's a disclaimer because this is being recorded. So it says if you don't want your call recorded, just hang up. And so we've had a few of those, but most people leave the information needed. And it's under, the name of it is Bird Lover, and anybody I give permission to be on that account. And it has had more benefits than I expected. It provides a central place for all communication. It records all the phone calls. Then that's converted to a Gmail message, and it will take the Gmail message, you can text information to it. I know you can't, but you can email text to it, and you can do photos by sending an email to the report injured bird email. I didn't put the address in here, but we'll have it later. And then that email provides us with a way to track that call, to identify who's the coordinator, what type of bird it is, what's the injury, and to get and a callback to call for more information. And I've been so surprised with the wide variety of requests for information about birds. I think we've done more education outreach, or I have anyway, in the since the middle of July, with that phone number and calling people back and giving information. Then the magic part of this, my son-in-law and daughter, Keith and Katie Ratterink, converted the label Gmails into a spreadsheet so that we have an easy way of keeping track of that data. It doesn't have to be hand entered. Okay, next. So now Davis will give a little tour through the process.
Good. Well, I'm one of the coordinators that works with Steny. And since Karen's been gone, it's mostly been Karen and Steny and I who've been running this system. She and her daughters have designed this system, and Karen really helped us design it to begin with. So I'm going to take you through the process. Our rescue process begins with a call to our hotline, the 646 number. Cloud Talk from that hotline generates the email to reportinjuredbirds.galcounty@gmail.com account. We all share that Gmail account, the coordinators do, and the dispatcher. The dispatcher they're the original viewer of this email. They'll look at the email and decide, well, is it on Galveston? Is it on Bolivar? Is it in Tiki? Or on the mainland? Then they'll assign it to the appropriate coordinator. The coordinators, Steny's been taking over Bolivar and Galveston, and of course, Maureen and Lynn do Tiki Island, and I've been mostly coordinating the mainland calls. So next slide. Okay. Yeah, when the coordinator first gets the call, they contact the reporter, the person who called it in, for more information. If we need more information, we find out the details and contact the reporter. Okay, then if the bird is injured, a nestling or a fledgling, that's important because if they're a baby, a nestling, the best way to handle that is to get the reporter to put the bird in a basket or a box and put it back in the tree or a bush close nearby, or even on their porch, somewhere where it's safe from cats and dogs and other animals. And it's amazing how the mamas and dads will come back and take care of those birds, even if they're not in the original nest. Okay, fledglings are another case. If a fledgling is just about ready to learn how to fly, so a lot of times people will look at a little bird on the ground and think, oh my gosh, this bird needs to be rescued. But it doesn't, because fledglings on the ground is a normal part of their education. Their parents are still feeding it, teaching it how to take care of itself. And so it's important that we talk people with fledglings into keeping it safe from other animals and just letting nature take its course. That's the best outcome for a fledgling. Okay, finally, if we can't do either one of those two things, we'll make sure that if it's an injured bird, we'll encourage the caller to, first of all, call the appropriate animal services, or if that can't happen, rescue the bird themselves. It's a fairly easy thing to take a blanket or a towel, gather up a bird, put it in a cardboard box with some air holes, and then you can take it to your animal control, or you can arrange for us to take care of it from there. Okay, then the coordinator determines if the bird was actually picked up and delivered to an animal service or it needs to be transported. So now we'll go to page 3. Okay, at that point, the coordinator then determines if the bird needs to be, the coordinator, me or Steny or the person who's actually handling the email, determines if the bird needs to be rescued and arranges for the rescue. Of course, a lot of times we'll try to talk the people through a re-nesting, or if it's a fledgling, we'll talk them through a protection way to protect it and let the parents raise it like they should. Okay, if it does need to be rescued and transported, then the coordinator will arrange the transport for the bird by the soonest method. And we'll go through that later. I've really gotten into rescuing birds. I love birds so much, and to see them injured and on the ground really breaks my heart. So I've really learned how to do it. Chasing birds around can be interesting, frustrating, and also very rewarding when we get them taken care of and taken to the wildlife center. So we got to make sure we get the transport arranged, make sure it gets to the wildlife center. I've been working with a young lady down in Galveston, Laura Louie, who goes up 5 days a week to the wildlife center and works there. And I'll meet her at 5:30 in the morning with my birds from the mainland, from League City or Bayou Animal Services. We'll meet up at along the freeway, and I'll give her my birds so she can take them directly up there. That saves a lot of work for our team of transporters, and she's done a wonderful job on almost daily basis. So after I, as a coordinator, do that, I'll update the Cloud Talk email with tags. I'll tag it with a rescue information and the transport information. And then finally, when the bird has been delivered to the wildlife center, I'll mark the email as closed with an outcome, hopefully delivered to the wildlife center, or even better, re-nested, or even better than that, recovered, flew away. And there's several other outcomes. Unfortunately, we do have some birds die on us. I've had birds die in my garage overnight. It's sad. It's a sad thing, and it breaks my heart every time, but it happens sometimes. So let's go to the next page. I'll tell you about a couple of my success stories. Okay, this year especially, since we've had so many mainland birds, we found out that there are several heron rookeries, heron and egret rookeries in this area that were not known to the coastal nesting bird surveys. And so Steny and I have been working with Richard Gibbons to include these in the annual survey. But it turns out that these rookeries, especially in places like Waterford Harbor in League City, or in Nassau Bay, there's a big rookery there for night herons. These rookeries are right in the middle of active roads mostly, and the trees above the roads are full of these birds, and they're building these crazy nests. Night herons are the worst nest builders around. You should see some of their sticks nests, and you see these birds, and of course when they're small it's no problem, but they grow quickly. And they start falling out of the trees. So we had many night herons falling to the ground, many of them getting run over by cars because they are right in the road. But we'll have 2 or 3 night herons standing alongside of the road and just waiting for their parents to feed them. But the funny thing about night herons, they aren't like forest birds and like our warblers and things. They will not take care of their birds once they fall out of the nest. So these little babies are helpless and in a lot of trouble down there because cats are going to get them, cars are going to get them. Anyway, especially over at Waterford Harbor, a lady named Cindy, who lived on a boat in Waterford Harbor, started noticing these guys and reporting them to us. And we went over there many times. Sandy helped me rescue birds over there. Stenny helped me with the survey, and we rescued birds over there. And some of them died, but we took many, many of them to the Wildlife Center. This is an example of one in a box. Okay, next. Another interesting rescue situation we had over on the west side of League City. There were 2 baby owls raised in a park in West League City. These are baby barred owls. Their parents took real good care of them. They were super healthy, but when they were fledged, they were in a neighborhood, and they found out that people would feed them. It's crazy. They went to 2 separate areas in the neighborhood, about a half a mile apart, and they were dive bombing people to get them to feed them. People were feeding them chicken breasts, tuna right out of the can, cat food. They were feeding them, the funniest thing they were feeding them was boiled shrimp. I don't know how they got that idea, but sure enough, they were giving these barred owls boiled shrimp. They would grab a hold of them, fly up to the roof, and happily eat these boiled shrimp. But anyway, they were also dive bombing the residents around there, trying to get attention. And this is not good for a wild bird. These birds were learning bad habits, and there's no way that these birds could be successful out in the wild if they kept up to habits like these. So the people that were there contacted us. They said these birds are getting to be a menace. The animal services couldn't catch them. They don't really have the techniques down to catch them. So I went out and I learned how to catch owls. It really helps if you have the people who've been feeding them help you out, because these little birds will come down right to your feet when they expect a meal. Then I can take my blanket, cover them up with the blanket. Of course, it doesn't make them too happy, but put them in the box and take them to the Wildlife Center. The Wildlife Center knows how to rewild these birds. They have big flying cages where they can teach them how to do a little bit of hunting and then release them out into the wild. So those are some examples. I'm sure it's fun. And I've rescued some pelicans and some roseate spoonbills and gotten mites all over myself. I don't particularly like that, but I'd much rather rescue a baby barred owl. Okay, that's my part of the thing. I'll hand it back to Stenny, and you can go to the next slide.
Stenny, do you want to answer the questions we have right now? Where did Stenny go?
Well, I could possibly answer them.
Okay, well, one of them is from Maureen.
Okay.
Okay, so my question is do you have to be a Texas Master Naturalist to take on any of these roles?
No, anybody can take on any of these roles.
So are we going to look at, once this is done, start contacting people? That's what I mean. I know that we need help on Tiki for sure.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to record it, so that we could ask for other folks' help and that we can use this as a tool. All of our volunteers, I want to invite all of our volunteers to view it, because the transporters really don't know what everything else, all the things that are happening and all the other transporters, nor the numbers. You pick up birds and take them to the Wildlife Center, but you don't see the big picture. So I think it would be good for anybody interested in seeing it. But I don't know any other places to advertise for help, or I hadn't thought about going outside.
I put it in the Tiki newspaper for September.
Mhm.
So
Good job.
anticipating you would say yes, and gave them your name. So I just wanted to confirm that that was okay.
Of course.
Great, thank you.
Very good. And then Mohammed, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, Stanley, is there any training that we can take if I find an injured bird in my backyard? If there's some first aid that I can give before or while I'm waiting for somebody to come and pick up the bird?
That's a great question, and I thank you for asking it, Mohammed. All of our native birds are covered by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and only people that have a rehab permit are legally allowed to treat them. But our expert bird rehabbers tell us over and over again that any bird can survive 24 hours. And if we try to give it water or food that it normally doesn't eat, we can do more damage to the bird than good. So the best thing, the very best first aid you can give a bird is to put it in a box where it's dark, close the box, put holes in it for air, and it automatically goes to sleep and rest. One of the big killers of injured birds is their own steroids. The cortisol levels shoot up when they are frightened and they've been injured, then a big human comes, they think they're going to get eaten alive. And sometimes they die because of that stress and nothing else. David mentioned that he threw a blanket over the owls. Well, that's what you must always keep in mind. Cover their eyes. They cannot see you. They cannot be afraid. Their stress levels will not go up. So that's if you want to rescue a bird or feel the need to bring it in, find something that you want to take in. The first thing you do is cover their eyes and get them in a dark place so they can rest. Many times, Josh talked about migration. Many times, the birds that are exhausted after migrating, all they need is a safe place to rest and recover, and they will just fly out. And even when they're collisions, when they run into a window, that's the best thing to do. And they'll either pass or open the box in 2 hours and they fly out faster than you can stop them. So that's the type of first aid that we recommend for an injured bird.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Denny. That's all the questions we have right now.
Okay, thank you. So we've talked about the big picture, and now we're going to talk about some of the day-to-day duties. And we have them broken into 7 roles. And again, this is similar to an incident command system, is into roles or tasks with responsibilities. Right now, I'm doing all of them. Davis is doing most of them or all of them. He specializes in rescues and transport, and I specialize in dispatcher coordinator. So, and then we cover for each other. But we have been doing this 24 hours since, and before that, we had Karen, but she needed to take a break, and She functioned with us on the 24-hour call system for a while, but she deserved a well-needed break. And so the other good thing about this is almost all of these roles can be done at home, except rescuing and transporting. And we have a fairly good group of transporters.
Yeah, not in the bathroom, not in the bedroom.
What we really need is all help in all the other areas with a dispatcher coordinator. It's very easy to lump those two together. And what works best is a pair of people taking on a certain period of time. And because sometimes you can't watch the emails, and the email gives you the recording that the person left. So you listen to the recording and determine what needs to happen, and you can assign, you have to listen to it to know where it's located, to know who to assign it to. So then when it's going to be moved on to a coordinator, I'll use Tiki Island as an example. Call comes in and it's from someone on Tiki Island, and I know Maureen and Lynn are going to deal with that. So I label it that Lynn and Maureen are the coordinators, that it's whatever kind of bird, blah, blah, blah. And we'll look at that. We have examples of the labels. And then I text them with the information that was on the recording and send them an email of the recording, but with the information that was in the recording. So that takes care of the pure dispatcher role. The coordinator, after listening to the phone call, you determine what to do. Is it re-nesting, injury, a referral for rescue? Is it out of the area? We have gotten calls from, last week we had a call from Searim Park. I took a call from Searim Park where there were several injured pelicans that were begging for food. One was being fed oranges. The other, somebody was kindly cutting up, the caller was kindly cutting up catfish to feed it, but there was no one there to help. There was no way to help. And those are, you just make the caller feel as good as you can and thank them for making the call. But if it is a bird that someone has rescued and they don't know what to do with it, that happens more often than not. They already have it in a box. So then we ask them to deliver it to an animal shelter or the Galveston Humane Society. Right now it's Galveston Humane Society or League City. If they're in Galveston County, we ask them to deliver it to or call Galveston County. They are beginning to cooperate with us, and then document all portions of the call and the labels, and we'll look at those later. So the rescue role is mainly picking up birds that either someone has already put in a box and they have no way to transport it, or to actually capturing the bird and bringing it in. We always try to get the local animal service, get the individual to call the local animal services first to see if they can help. Bolivar has no one that will go over to help with the birds. They are pretty good. We have a good Bolivar team. We have 4 or 5 people that will rescue the bird, but waiting in the ferry line and going across to Galveston and coming back is, you know, that's a big ask. Bolivar is very unique in the people and the pelicans that are there. We've had one pelican that has been sick for 2 months. I can't tell you how many people have called that pelican in, and the rescuers go out and he's flown away. Well, he finally got captured. He or she finally got rescued and is at the Wildlife Center now. But they're a unique, each species, you learn so much doing this, each species has its own characteristics when it's sick, and pelicans can last a long time, and you can only capture them when they can't fly and they are in a place where they can't swim. So that's a hard point. So our transporters is another role that we're very dependent on. We couldn't do anything without our transporters. Karen had a plan with the Galveston folks where people committed to be on call for certain days. And Davis mentioned Laura Louie. She works 4 days on, 4 days off at the Wildlife Center. So she will bring birds in on the 4 days that she works. She picks them up on the afternoon before and takes them in. Davis would meet her the morning on her way in. Our goal is to schedule all of our transport days. Everything has been working good. I've had transporters every day lined up except for tomorrow. So as soon as we're done, I'm going to start looking for a transporter from Galveston. The transporter has to make sure that each bird has a transporter form. This form is very important for 2 reasons. It connects us with the Wildlife Center. It demonstrates, for whatever reason, if you were stopped by the police and you had a bird in a box, there is a good Samaritan law that covers it, but if someone wanted to be ornery or didn't know, it's illegal to have a native bird. It's illegal unless you have a rehab permit. So, so that form records the information, and it also protects you, and it hooks up with the Wildlife Center of Texas. It has their logo and where it's going. So the transporter has to make sure it has that. What else about the transporter? Oh yes, the Humane Society gets birds from everybody, from the public. So we may know about 3 birds that are there, but actually there may be 5 birds there that the transporter would pick up in the morning. So we ask the transporters to report, or I usually call them and say, how many did you deliver? So that we get an accurate count, that we have all our chicks taken care of. We know what we had. We have all our ducks in a row, more or less. And then Facebook Monitor, that's another task that can be done from home, solely from home. We've been monitoring it, and but it could use more attention in that there's very little, the phone number's up there. There's not any other information about the phone number. There are other Wildlife Center, Animal Services phone numbers that could be listed to help other folks. I got a call this morning from LaPorte, and we don't do LaPorte, but I could help him by telling him who to call and where to look, or he could try renesting the birds, and he decided he was gonna renest. Doves are falling out of the nest. We had 3 calls after the storm that doves were falling out of the nest. So the Facebook Monitor would accept new members and would also post follow-up success stories. We have 2 rules with our Facebook. One is our questions. One, do you want to report a bird? The other is, do you agree to the rules? I have been accepting everybody that agrees to the rules because we had some issues with folks using the Facebook posts to go get hawks. And everything we do is tied to the Wildlife Center. So every bird that we deal with gets to the Wildlife Center of Texas or it passes away, but it doesn't go to anybody else. Okay, next. Another role is our data manager, and that's to post monthly reports from our Google spreadsheet. It's set up so that we will be able to do that, and Cindy Lining has volunteered and worked with it some, but not since we've had it refined. So I'll be contacting you, Cindy, on working with the new spreadsheet, and we'll see it in a minute. The next one is a scheduler, and that's to solicit transporters. The target is to transports, have them scheduled 2 weeks in advance, and to also make short-term and emergency requests for transports. And that would take some coordination, but it's something that would really help the overall process. And then we need someone to put all this into standard operating procedures. And we are accumulating, Davis is accumulating write-ups that we find that we can use to study on. This is our Gmail account, what it looks like after it is labeled. And you can see one of the Cloud Talks on the right-hand side, new voicemail from, I put in that's my phone number to see what a call looks like before it's labeled. And the labels are very easy to attach. You can see the coordinators are in turquoise. The outcome delivered, or whatever the outcome is in gray. It's in order of how we deal with them. We have the location, what type of, is it injured or sick, what species, how many, that one didn't have that, but how many there are, and then where's the temporary location, and you can see Laura Louie is the transporter. Joe Mundy was a transporter. Joe Bryan is transporting today. So it's an easy, quick look at what's the status of that call. So let's go to the next one. This is the spreadsheet that my son-in-law wrote a script for that turns all that information into that from that Gmail into this spreadsheet. So we have everyone involved, the numbers, and typically what we would like to do is to be able to pull out those that were delivered to the Wildlife Center of Texas, those that we did consultations for. And then next, this is our last slide. So the unintended consequences and next steps. So the big thing that I've gotten out of this is the positivity plus factor. And doing this and dealing with all the people that love birds is, excuse me, an antidote to COVID-19. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional, but people are so happy to have someone to talk to about their birds, and they're so interested. And so I've felt this a long time, that we're in a way, this service that we provide to the community, to the animal services, to the birds, really does more for people than it does for the birds, because nature takes its course. But the education, I have seen the education, we have seen the education go from people not knowing anything about what to do to some of the Facebook posters telling people exactly all the right things to do. And so our new system will address all of the renesting, the referrals. It records everything that happens. We get calls from much further than I ever dreamed, and we can help them if it's just a phone call. And it records all of our actions in one place. And what this system needs desperately to continue is some more volunteers that are willing to work from home. And we will train you further. And please let me know through the chat or send me an email. Now for questions.
Okay, we have, Stenny, one question, and actually we have somebody that's volunteered to transport tomorrow for you.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
it's in
great.
chat. It's Chantel. So you have that, and then you have a question from Patty.
Hi, Stenny. So I think you might have answered it, but I wanted to know what the range of coverage is. So it doesn't sound like it's only Galveston County, but you know, I was curious about Friendswood, Clear Lake, Seabrook, Pearland, Pasadena.
We have worked with all of them.
Okay.
But we've had to cut back and say, when people call from Friendswood, if their animal control service won't pick it up, we can give them their phone number, or we can tell them to take it into the wildlife center. We have had to cut back. We cannot serve everybody, or we tell them they can bring it to the League City Animal Shelter and we'll pick it up.
Okay.
That's our fallback from the mainland. Or a rescue, Davis might do a rescue. We've had Mississippi kites being injured, and Davis has rescued a few of those recently. So we can't provide service for everyone.
Right. Doing a wonderful job, so.
Oh, thank you. It's a matter of education more than anything else, really.
Yeah, and I know the Galveston Daily News, you can put something on their bulletin board.
Mm-hmm.
Or their volunteer area, asking for volunteers. And I think that's free to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm open to ideas. Y'all send me an email.
All right.
Yes, would you, we don't have any more questions. Would you like to put your email, Stenny? I know they can get it if they're master naturalist from our
Sure.
but it'd be nice if you put it in chat, and if people are interested, they can either email you or put it in chat and we can save the chat.
Right, I'm typing in my email right now.
And I'd like to thank you and Josh and Davis for all your training today. I learned a whole lot. I didn't know anything about this, I'll be honest.
Well, good. Well, that's great. Well, thank you for attending, and
please contact Stenny.
yes, please.
Right. And I think we have a substitute for Ellen today. Patty is going to talk about upcoming attractions, I think.
Yes, well, first, I just wanted to let everybody know you can log 1.5 hours to AT GBAC sponsored. And then on Thursday, we have the Galveston, we have another AT coming on Thursday at 10 o'clock, and it's going to be the Galveston Bay Bottlenose Dolphin Research. So that'll be a good.
That'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stenny, I have a question for you. It's Maureen.
Yes, Maureen.
I muted myself. So if anybody's on this call and they want to volunteer, is there another follow-up meeting, or are we just going to find out what role they would like. They're going to tell you what role they want, and you're going to work with them. You and Davis. Will train them,
Yes,
or how's that
yes.
go?
Yeah, what role they're willing to do. Thank you for that, Maureen. Yeah.
Yeah.
What role you would like to take on, and we will train you privately. Um, it's not complicated.
What is complicated this morning again is, in fact, if you ever decide to become a rescuer, you need to be trained. Like someone like I know Josh and other people have trained. You went out with other
Right,
people
well,
to learn.
We don't really need any rescuers. We're not focusing on the rescue. No, it's a coordinator, dispatcher, a scheduler that we really need help with.
If we come to a point that additional training is needed for rescue, that's something we can schedule, and I'm willing to provide that training if and when we get to that point. It's just not currently something that we've got so many other things we need to focus on at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm always available to walk anybody through each situation, but as far as scheduling a rescue training, it's just not something currently on the radar.
Thank you, Josh. It's
No.
Maureen, and that really helps us hear that. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All righty. Well, this is Maureen again, and I want to say thank you to everybody for coming. I hope all of you found a slot here that you'd like to volunteer for, because we sure could use the volunteers to help out. I mean, when you go from 300 to 900 in just 2 years, it's just amazing. So
Yeah. And it's working at home. That's the other
yes,
benefit.
it's a safe role to do volunteer service that benefits the birds and the communities around us. Totally agree.